The state commits the first crime when it creates private property out of public resources. In order to do that, it must first steal what belongs to the public to give it to a private individual, and usually a wealthy and powerful individual. That is the dirty secret that Milton Friedman, Leo Strauss, and the rest of the Chicago boys want kept secret. The police state exists in the ideal laissez-faire free market capitalist society purely to protect property rights. Well, there's some problems with that, because if property is 90% of the law, then taxes to support the police state should be 90% property taxes. We all know that's not the case. Property in this country is taxed the least. What we tax most is income. What we tax most are sales or sales taxes and various other taxes. We tax people's labor. We don't tax their property. And that is how the tax system is unfair in this country. If we wanted a fair tax, we would place more burden on property tax rather than on income tax. Another way of looking at property tax is that you could think of it as rent to the public. That is, someone who quote-unquote owns property doesn't own it outright, but they rent it from the public. The public receives the benefit of that rent. If you want a lot of private property, you're going to have to pay more to upkeep that property in order for the infrastructure supporting that property to be put in place, for the police state to protect that private property. There's a whole bunch of infrastructure that goes into the creation and maintenance of private property that could easily come under the rubric of being a rent. So tax and the idea of having a property tax and the idea of paying rent to the government are very, very similar, and they're both very similar ways of looking at that. The idea of a death tax, I think, is one of the biggest scams the Republicans have ever attempted. The estate tax, when you look at it, the estate tax is a property tax that is deferred until after you die. Now, I'm not saying it's the most ideal way of taxing. I would prefer to see property taxes enforced more in real time than deferring them until after you're deceased. But given what it is, the fact that people have taken, let's say, a courtesy of waiting until after you're no longer using the property to tax you for it, and twisted that around to present it as if it were a death tax, I think is one of the biggest scams the Republicans have ever attempted. And I hope it gets soundly defeated. Some people have called me socialist or communist or, whatever label, okay? I am none of those. I just see a system that is very unfair. It's very unfair to people who work for a living. It favors people who own stuff, who get by owning stuff without having to pay for maintaining that privilege. And I think that is the root cause of a lot of the disparity, economic disparity in this country, is the fact that the wealthy and powerful are getting off very light on their burden for maintaining the state. So when people talk about fair tax, they want a flat tax. Don't consider it a fair tax until you start imposing property taxes and you start treating property taxes as rent or as a fee, and having the wealthy who own all the property paying for maintaining the police state that keeps it intact. So anyways, that's all for now. Thank you.